Thanks for joining us. You've tuned into Arirang's Within the Frame. I'm Handan in Seoul. 8 decades have passed since World War II came to an end in 1945. Yet the pain and controversies surrounding Japan's wartime sexual slavery rumble on. Efforts have persisted at home and abroad at various levels to further spread the truth about the sexual enslavement, which, to a certain extent, have raised the global awareness of the issue. But those efforts are also faced with significant challenges, sparking considerable intergovernmental friction and heated debates. On this episode of Within the Frame, we take time to remember the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery in commemoration of the International Memorial Day for Comfort Women. And we've invited a special guest today who has been at the forefront of efforts to bring the issue to global attention. Without further ado, let's bring in Phyllis Kim, Executive Director at the Comfort Women Action for Redress and Education, to the studio. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So yesterday marked the International Memorial Day for Comfort Women, of course, euphemism for wartime sex slaves. How was the day first established, and what significance does the day hold?
Well, August 14, 1991, a Korean woman named Kim Hak-sun first came out to say that she was a victim of sexual slavery by Japan during World War II and demanded apology and accountability from the Japanese government. That breaking of silence encouraged other survivors as well from Korea and other countries from Asia Pacific to also come out, despite the shame, despite the stigma or cultural barriers that have silenced them for decades. It was the first time in history that a victim of sexual violence during a military conflict actually demanded accountability from the perpetrator government. And it was during the 1990s, and that actually, this breaking of silence moved the world to declare rape during wartime is a crime against humanity. So in 2012, survivors and activists who work on this issue declared that August 14 will be the International Memorial Day for the Japanese military comfort women, and Korean government followed suit and declared and designated August 14 as the National Memorial Day.
So, late Korean victim named Kim Hak-sun 할머니, she publicly testified for the very first time about the brutality of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, and that became the International Memorial Day. The day falls on the eve of Korea's National Liberation Day as well, so obviously the day holds immense significance, immense historical and humanitarian significance as well. And you've mentioned that her testimony brought the issue to global spotlight. And on that note, tell us about how the international community currently perceives the issue of sexual enslavement by the Japanese military during World War II.
Well, thanks to the brave testimonies by Kim Hak-sun and other grandmas who followed her footsteps from Korea and other countries, now it is widely acknowledged in the international community that the comfort women atrocity was one of the most grave human rights violation for women in modern times. In 1996 and 1998, after these testimonies came out, there were 2 reports by the UN human rights special rapporteurs, and they defined the comfort women issue as an institutionalized military sexual slavery and a war crime. And they provided the recommendations to the Japanese government as to how to properly resolve the comfort women issue. And that includes a acknowledgement on the part of the Japanese government of the crime, official and direct apology to the victims, and full investigation, legal reparations, punishment of those responsible, and ongoing education to the Japanese next generation. Since then, these 6 recommendations became the standards by which the comfort women issue should be resolved. About 30 years later, the UN human rights bodies are still repeating the same recommendations to the Japanese government due to Japan's failure to follow them. Most recently, in 2022, UN's Human Rights Committee under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights concluded as follows, and I quote, "The state party has made no progress with regard to the committee's previous recommendations and continues to deny its obligation under the covenant to address the continuing violations of the victims' human rights. It also regrets the lack of criminal investigation and prosecution of perpetrators and the lack of effective remedies and full reparation of all victims of past human rights violations," end of quote. So in 2022, the UN still is saying that Japanese government has done nothing to properly resolve the comfort women issue. And remember, 22 is after the 2015 so-called the Comfort Women Agreement between South Korea and Japan that was supposed to finally and irreversibly resolve the comfort women issue. But UN is still saying that the 2015 agreement even did not resolve the issue at all. In the United States, we go to history conferences, history teachers conferences every year to meet teachers, to provide educational materials and resources and build networks. There is a huge changes compared to 2007 when we first became involved in the comfort women issue, that now if we go to these conferences, we meet a lot more teachers who say that, oh, I know the comfort women issue, and we have teachers come up to us and tell us that, you know, I do teach this important history in my classroom. So there are many more teachers who are now teaching it in the US classrooms. So the Japanese government has lobbied against every single campaigns we conducted. But we've been winning every single one of them. And I am confident that international community is with the grandmas.
So it's great to hear that there's increased awareness about the issue on the global stage, and that we've made some progress in enhancing the global awareness. But it looks like Japan still has a lot more improvement to make and to answer to the calls from international community and from international organizations like the UN.
Yes.
A lot of efforts have been made by South Korean scholars and activists like yourself to increase the global awareness of the issue, and one of them is building peace statues in different parts of the world. Could you give us an overview of the statues erected so far?
Well, I am based in the United States, and I am Korean American, so my activity and my organization's activities are based in the United States, and we're doing it as Americans. But in terms of the statues, I believe there are 147 comfort women statues in South Korea alone. And there are 16 memorials of a various design in the United States. And other than the US, there are statues in Canada, Australia, Germany, Taiwan, China, and the Philippines, and most recently in Italy. But the Japanese government has successfully removed some of the statues in the Philippines and successfully removed the information plaque from the peace statue in Germany. I believe there are efforts being made in a few more European countries to build a comfort women memorial, some in secret. And whenever I get the inquiry, I always tell them and give advice to expand the horizon and make a call for artists to local community to involve local artists and local students to the cause so that they can have ownership of the issue. And so I hope to see many more memorials in different unique designs in many more places. We'll see.
You've mentioned briefly about the removal of some of the statues, and we'll discuss more about that as we move on. But before that, you've made significant contributions to erecting the first Statue of Peace, which is located in Glendale, California. But I hear it wasn't all smooth sailing. Obviously, there was considerable diplomatic friction between Korea and Japan. And I also hear that even some U.S. locals were against it, saying that it's a divisive reminder of the horrors of the war. How did you address those challenges?
Well, every time we had a campaign, as I said earlier, there was an anti-lobby backed by the Japanese government. And some people were concerned. Some were genuine concerns about stepping into historical dispute between Korea and Japan because Korea and Japan both are allies of the United States. We don't want to side one country over the other. And some said the issue was divisive. And to that, what we would tell them is that we asked them, is the Holocaust divisive? What if the Germans told you that remembering the Holocaust in the United States is unnecessary because it is divisive, because it didn't happen on American soil? How about because it only happened to Jewish people? So we also tell them that we must remember this dark history because sexual violence against women in conflict is still happening around the globe under the auspices of a military authority. So to that explanation, most people understand and agree that the comfort women issue is a relevant history and relevant issue to the women and girls in the U.S., and it should be remembered and taught in the United States. Yes, we faced many challenges. The city of Glendale was sued, and we had to fight the lawsuit all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Japanese city of Osaka severed the sister city relationship with San Francisco when it learned that San Francisco decided to make the Comfort Women Memorial a city asset. Every Consul General of Japan in Los Angeles pressures the Glendale City Council members and demand the removal of the statue from Glendale. But the city of Glendale is very firm on the comfort women issue. Every year, Glendale celebrates July 30th, the unveiling date of the Peace Monument, by declaring and proclaiming the day as the Comfort Women Day. And we just celebrated the 13th Comfort Women Day in city of Glendale a few weeks ago. The mayor said that when she met with the Japanese Consul General, she told him that some history is not up for debate. Comfort women history is not up for debate. So she said she's very proud to have the Peace Monument in Glendale, and the city council members of Glendale assure us time and again that Peace Monument will be safe in Glendale. Well, we brought the issue to Glendale, but Glendale embraced it as its own. But a Mitsubishi scholar named Mark Remzier at Harvard Law School continues to conduct a revisionist campaign but his new book is being completely ignored by the American scholars and academia. So our best strategy for Japan's history revisionism is to tell the story and continue our efforts to educate the next generation about the comfort of women issue. And I'm sure we're winning this fight again.
I still remember the thrill when I first read news articles about the peace statue in Glendale. It was very inspiring, which makes it all the more special to meet you in person and hear those stories firsthand. Let's talk more about the peace statue movement in the U.S. I understand that it played quite a big role in enhancing political influence, if you will, of Korean communities there.
Yes.
Tell us more about this.
Yes. It all started with the House Resolution 121 campaign in 2007, actually. So to go back to 2007, the Korean American community played a crucial role in passing the House Resolution 121, which is dubbed as the Comfort Women Resolution, by organizing a grassroots movement across the United States. After the resolution passed, the Korean American community once again came together to build comfort women memorials in different cities in the United States. Not just a Statue of Peace, but various forms of memorials chosen by the local supporters. So building a memorial in a public and prominent location requires grassroots lobbying, raising the issue to the political leaders in a way that they can take it on as their own, and showing there are broad support from all sectors of the community, including the Japanese American community, and showing there are the issue is relevant to current situation relating to girls and women. So doing this work, the Korean community grew so much in terms of political capacity and influence, and learned that if we raise an issue that has relevance to the entire community, and if we go for a right direction, such as the human rights, our voices will be heard. That is the lesson we learned. And some of the groups that were involved in the Comfort Women campaign turned into a grassroots organizations for political empowerment for the Korean American communities. And they are now providing opportunities for the younger generations to get involved.
We hear that some peace statues built abroad are on the verge of being torn down, though the bronze girl in Berlin is one example.
Yes.
Why are some local authorities pushing to remove them, and what's being done to preserve the statues?
The Japanese government has a huge war chest and is investing a considerable amount of money in developing the logic for history revisionism that it is pushing. So I think it's important for us to investigate what persuaded the mayor of Berlin to decide to remove the statue. And we need to know that in order to develop a counter-argument for the local people to use. One irony actually is the more efforts Japan makes to undo the statue, actually it brings more attention and interest from the community and the media and awareness of the issue. That's exactly what happened in Glendale when it was sued, and in San Francisco when the Osaka severed the sister city relationship. So it also exposes Japan's ill intent to erase the history and whitewash the history, and works counter to their goal of sweeping this issue under the rug. So those of us who want to raise awareness actually welcome this kind of dispute, because more people in Berlin will now become interested in this issue and will start looking into what this is all about, and they will learn the true history in the process and and will be more become aware of the comfort women issue. So we should all applaud and support the efforts by the citizens of the Berlin and who are fighting the Japanese government to keep the statue in Berlin.
You've previously mentioned that although revealing the truth about Japan's wartime sexual enslavement is important, we need to refrain from indiscreetly erecting the peace statues. Could you elaborate on this?
Actually, when I came to Korea, I found it surprising to learn that so many Korean people thought all statues of peace in foreign countries were built by a Korean organization, Korean Council, Jeongyeon. That's not true at all, actually. You know, it may be true for some of the statues or the private memorials, but never the ones on public property, at least in the United States, such as the ones in Glendale, California, Georgia, or San Francisco. The statues have the symbolism of the public nature and legitimacy when it is built on public and prominent space with the support from the local government and the local community. So that's what we're looking for. Achieving that, of course, it's not easy. You know, it takes a long and consistent effort and well-designed strategy. San Francisco was the best example for that, along with Glendale, California, where community members, including the Japanese Americans, came together and went to the city hall to show their support for the statue and the issue. So, you know, going to a private property and erecting it, you know, wherever it is available may be a quick and easy solution, but because you don't need to go through these long and difficult processes of the approval or some of the red tapes of the city government. But you can emphasize enough now how important it is to build the memorial on public site to gain that public nature and legitimacy, because that's the source of power. That's why Glendale, the city of Glendale, fought to the end to keep the peace monument in Glendale. So I think, you know, ultimately, you know, that way we will be able to fight the revisionism and raise more awareness about the comfort women issue.
There's a lot more questions that I'd like to ask you, but because we are running short on time, let me get to the final question of our discussion today. Only 9 registered survivors of Japan's wartime sexual slavery remain in Korea, and the clock is ticking. What actions must Korea, Japan, as well as civil societies and the international community as well, take to seek a fundamental solution?
Well, first of all, it is essential that we take care of the surviving grandmas so that they survive for as long as possible, and giving them the respect they deserve for you know, their efforts to raise awareness and hold the criminals accountable. We also need to make sure their pains and sufferings and their courageous actions to recover honor and justice are properly recorded and preserved and included in the education for the generations to come. Incidentally, the House of Sharing is at the crossroads now, since all the grandmas there had moved to a medical facility due to health problems. House of Sharing is an important legacy and a place of education that needs to be preserved, and I hope the Korean government will take actions to preserve it. So frankly, these days, the global dynamics is not favorable for human human rights or holding countries like Japan accountable for crimes against humanity like the comfort women issue due to increased tensions between the US and China, wars between Russia and Ukraine, and Israel and Palestine. And the recent collaboration, for example, between the governments of Japan and Korea is a direct result of such a shift in the global dynamics. However, we must not forget that the history of mankind is one that inches towards a better world. So to quote Dr. Martin Luther King, the moral arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. So in order for it to bend towards justice, we must continue to educate and raise awareness about what happened to our grandmas.
All right, we'll conclude our discussion there, but our fight must go on. Fight for the justice and fight for victims will go on. Thank you so much, Phyllis, for taking time to share your special stories with us today.
Thank you so much for your program.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more same time next week. Have a great weekend.